Oh, hello, my lovely, and welcome to this week's episode of Lotus Life, the podcast. My name is Rose Tautari, and I am, among many things in this lifetime, a human design guide, a soul mentor, an author, and a podcaster. And this is a show where each week we get to hang out and chat about all things human design and soul purpose. And I'm here to teach you how you can thrive in your most aligned life by empowering yourself to understand your unique, true self. So human design is a beautiful synthesis bringing together ancient wisdom with modern science, and it's a way of really understanding the contract between your soul and the universe for who you came here to be, what you came here to do, and what karma you came to correct this lifetime around. So this podcast, Lotus Life, is a celebration of embodying the lotus flower that blooms and thrives, growing from even the murkiest and muddiest of conditions in life. So get ready to lotus your life. Now this week I'm sharing about parenting and raising thriving little people through the lens of human design. And for those of you who are a little newer around here, maybe this is the first episode you're tuning into, hi, and maybe you've been a long time listener, but whatever the case is, welcome. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my own parenting journey just to give you the holistic picture. So I have within me, and the purpose that my soul is here for, one of my gifts is nurturing or mothering, but from more of a collective point of view. And I always knew right from a really young age that I was here to help others in some way, shape or form or capacity, and to have some kind of bigger role in helping others to thrive. But I never myself had an urge to become a mother or to have my own biological children, which could be a whole conversation in itself when it comes to how women and those who identify as women show up in this world. And really it comes down to how, for me personally, I consciously chose to step away from that box or societal expectation a very long time ago. And I am very grateful to my loved ones in my life for always supporting my individual choices. So with all that said, I have been a mother and a parent for just over 10 years, as when I met Darren, my partner, he came as a family-sized package, being a solo father with a 4-year-old. So while in some ways I always like to say that my initiation into parenthood came a little differently than the route that a mother who births a newborn and evolves as a parent as their child ages, my parenting school, if you want to call it that, was happening at the same time as my son, who was heading off to preschool and then on to his first day at school. So we've kind of both grown up and expanded and evolved together, which I love. And we've always taken the approach that we have wanted, Darren and I, to raise a human who thrives as themselves. And with Darren being a 70s baby and I'm an 80s baby, we both grew up in the eras when parenting and schooling and raising children kind of didn't have the options that exist nowadays, or certainly they weren't so easily to access or to find out about or to see other people, doing a different way or the new paradigm way. And certainly the process that we both experienced was very mainstream. It was very standardized, and children were expected to fit into the box that they were put in, right? And they would come out at the other end of this system with this kind of society's expectation of this linear development and the course that their life should, in inverted commas, be taking. So Darren and I are both projectors, and for those of you who are a little bit newer around here, we're actually both mental projectors, which is kind of wild. But basically that means that we have both experienced in our own lives. We've experienced very heavy conditioning by our environments, and we've at various times in our lives when we were younger both struggled a lot with being so open to the world and really feeling like we were both these kind of star-shaped pegs trying to be squeezed into square-shaped holes by society, I think is the best way to describe it. And that's been a really big or a huge part of why we are both really passionate about raising our projector son, who is a splenic projector. And just for curiosity's sake, for those of you out there that know a little bit about profiles, he's a 2-5 profile. So we are very passionate about raising him in accordance with what is correct for him and his true nature. And he's now 14. So at that stage when, it is even more important to have this, I guess, new paradigm in our minds as we're raising a teenager, right? And so obviously along the way, when he was younger, we've had to put in the boundaries. We've had to put those in place. We've had to empower him to understand his own strengths and areas of work-ons or learnings, which was happening well before we knew anything about human design. But the beauty of it now, and the work that I do now, and the knowledge that I know I'm here to empower others with, is it's like very much having a user manual for not just our son's way of showing up in the world and thriving, but our own too as parents, which I guess brings me nicely to the first point that I really want to emphasize when it comes to human design and parenting, and is a really common question when parents first start to learn about this, is where to start. And in my opinion, 2000% the place to start is with yourself. To understand yourself and your own design, to reparent yourself if needed, to do the inner work. Because while all this information and knowledge is incredible, and at the end of the day, it is just a tool, it is a guideline, and it is a lens to look through, right? But you really need to be comfortable with how you as a parent show up in your own life first. And what human design doesn't do is to give a prescriptive kind of color by numbers approach to raising children. It's not an IKEA instruction manual, right? So simply by thriving as a parent, that automatically gives you incredible gifts and capabilities to love and to nurture and to allow your children to thrive, no matter whether you're using their human design or not. But if you are nurtured and allowing yourself to be your true self as the parent, to be honoring your own magic, to be living in your alignment and flow, moving through life with peace and in your happiness lane, then automatically, without even trying, you'll know that your loved ones, your kids, they'll be showing up as their brightest and best selves because they can see that you are. And it's that classic adage that kids don't emulate what they're told by you as a parent, they emulate what they see and what energetics they feel coming from you as a parent. So I hope that that kind of makes sense, but that's certainly the first place to start. Understand your own human design, experiment with that, get comfortable with that, play with that, have fun with that, and then turn your attention to parenting through the lens of human design. So it's that saying of put on your own oxygen mask first, right? And I guess what you can say is like, get real with yourself as a parent, have that self-love for yourself as a parent. Like your child and their approach to life is going to naturally blossom no matter what. You're here to guide them and obviously nurture them and allow them to thrive and support them to thrive. But you're not here to show them how to live their life, right? And so it's kind of like comes back to like check yourself and go, are my expectations around, like in quotation marks, getting it right as a parent? Am I holding my child to kind of this unnecessary expectation or bar that I've arbitrarily put out there, or I've seen in my own life? So this is what I was doing in my life when I was your age, so you must be held to that standard too. It's kind of that process of trust and releasing the control, letting go of the grip on the steering wheel, and just allowing, being more at that place of flow know, the win-win universe that like if your child is thriving, you're going to thrive. And if you're thriving, your child is going to thrive. And, less expectation, less perception from society that this is what you should be doing, all the shoulds, and just allow and say, actually, you know what? I am open to seeing how my unique soul that I am helping to support and thrive is going to develop according to their own unique human design, their own unique soul's purpose, right? So after all that, where to? Well, this is a whole big, wide, beautiful, expansive and juicy cosmos of empowerment that you can dive into when it comes to parenting and human design and how the two beautifully interweave. And certainly I would say understanding the energy type of the little souls that you are parenting is the first step. So if you haven't already listened to my episode from a couple of weeks ago, I will link it in the show notes here. And what that episode explains is the basics of the different energy types and how they show up in this world. And it's kind of like the permission slip that you can understand that those children need to be and embody their unique energy types. So whether they're a sacral being, the generators, the manifesting generators, through to the non-sacral energy types, the manifestors, the projectors, and the reflectors. So what I love about all this, and it really is a broad brush, right? But it's so incredibly powerful as a starting point, is that it gives you so many of the basics that I think we as parents often struggle with when we're trying to understand, it's like just even trying to understand the simple setting that our kid is on. It's like that kind of thing. If you're constantly going, are they similar to us or are they wildly different from us? Are the similarities because I, as the adult, have projected my way of being onto them and nurtured them to be more like me as their parent, or is it actually in their nature to be the way they are? So it's like human design helps to just kind of get the clarity around so many of those questions and doubts and, areas where we start to spiral off into like, oh my God, have I done this to my child, or is my child already like this, right? So understanding the type that your child is, well, that gives you like the foundation. That's what I like to say is the foundation, the entry level, and really the general overview or the basics as to how they are going to show up in the world. And it's kind of like understanding their unique battery or motor that they're running on energy-wise, which obviously then affects how their rhythm and their energy runs through the day. Also their sleep too, the type of movement their bodies will thrive with being able to do each day. For example, whether that movement for them looks like spurts followed by rest, or is it that actually they are moving all day long, then crash at night type of children, and really how they thrive the best when it comes to showing up in life, right? Do they need to be invited? Do they need to be responding to their environment? Do they just simply need to follow their desires? Or do they just need to sit back and kind of be open to being in the environment that they're in? And how are they best nourished during the day? How do they show up in a room? Are they the child that is going to be naturally more selective about who they choose to interact with, if they're a manifestor, for example? Or are they this little like magnetic being that is open and seemingly attracting the world to them if they're a generator, So knowing your child's energy type, whether they're a generator, mani-gen, manifestor, projector, reflector, is also really empowering because it helps you to know how the communication dynamic between you as the parent and your child can be at its best, So rather than this blanket one-size-fits-all approach to communicating, you can be empowered to know, okay, so my child is a generator with sacral authority, for example. That means their sacral chakra is their decision maker. That's their gut talking to them all day long, and it will be making yes or no decisions in every little moment of their life, That child will be making lots of noises when their sacral is excited by life. So as a parent, you can support them by, like the old way of parenting that was like children should be seen and not heard, is so disempowering for a generator, because they are naturally and intuitively going to make noises when they're excited. They're going to hum, they're going to sing, they're going to be chatty, they're going to be maybe just walking around making lots of kind of more, just noises in general, not necessarily speaking words. So the hell yes moments that a generator child is feeling, they'll follow those towards everything that is energetically correct for them. And for you as a parent, you can empower them by knowing, okay, so I know that my child's design runs on a yes or no type question. That's what helps them to thrive and be in their own, brilliance. So I can ask them something as simple as, say if I know that I'm going to give them a snack, give them 2 options on the table and they can choose which one they're having. Or to ask them, if you're able to ask, do you want this or that? For other communication aspects, for example, if we talk about a projector child, it's much more open-ended. A projector child has a completely different way of thriving in the world than a generator. And like the generator's running on this life force, sacral chakra energy and leaning into everything that lights them up. But with a projector child, communicating with them will look completely different, but is still true and aligned for them in order to support them to thrive. So for example, with a projector, it's inviting them into experiences, being the parent that asks open-ended questions, allowing the projector child to guide the conversation, giving them positive affirmation, like words that support them and celebrate their achievements and recognize them for what they are really, really good at, because that's ultimately, projectors are designed to come here to be really, really good at something and have this kind of more sort of wise guide approach to life. And where a projector child is not going to be thriving is when you're expecting them to be the one that initiates or kind of like forces themselves into a conversation. They're going to naturally and intuitively know that they're waiting to be kind of invited in energetically. They're not going to be the kids that you want to be forcing them to participate in anything. And trust me, as a projector myself and having a projector son, like, please don't force a projector to do anything. Like, that was probably the worst parts of my growing up, was when I was forced to do something that I just knew it was painfully wrong. And, for projectors as well, it's like they don't thrive on being expected to keep up with the pace of the world around them. So they run on a really different pace. So that's how they can be celebrated for the achievements they make that don't necessarily have to keep pace with the achievements that other children might be making. So like even just knowing all of these sorts of broader details can be so incredible, because it's just the biggest permission slip to understand. And as a parent, to be also able to trust your own intuition. We know there's actually nothing wrong with your child. If your child is more selective about spending time with other kids, or if they have a really high intensity battery that runs all day and feels really exhausting to you, maybe you're in a dynamic where you as a parent are a projector and your child is a manifesting generator, for example. Like that energy dynamic, you might be like, oh my God, my child is so exhausting, but it's not that there's anything wrong with them. They just have a different way of showing up in the world to you as their parent. So that's where things get so incredible, and I get so lit up about talking about all of this. And I believe it's so incredibly empowering to understand, not just those broader details that I've just covered, but what I want to get into is something that's in your child's human design, and everybody's human design, is called their digestion. And that's what I'm going to focus here in part 1 of this episode. And then there's also what's known as cognition, or you could call that, say, the super sense that your child has or that you have. And I'm going to touch on cognition next week in part 2, in next week's episode. So let's talk digestion. There are 12 variations, and what this helps us to understand is how individual beings absorb their environment through the digestion of everything that they come across in life. And the digestion part of a human design chart is really incredible because it relates to everything from food, and how we digest, literally food and drink, through to the way we digest information and learning and play, when it comes to children. So essentially there are 6 types of digestion, being appetite, taste, thirst, touch, sound, and light. And each of the 6 types has 2 variations, which is energetically how that type of digestion is expressed in a person's individual design. So you only have one of the 12 that is true for each individual. And the way we know which one you have is it comes from either the left-facing arrow, which is a masculine expression of that type, or the right-facing arrow, which is the feminine energetic expression. And this part, your digestion in your chart, when you're looking at your human design chart, there are 4 arrows around the head space area on the chart itself. And the digestion arrow is the top left arrow out of the 4. So now remember, when we're talking about we're not talking about gender when we talk about energy. So the masculine, feminine expressions of each of these types is like the yin and the yang, that they both exist within every single one of us, and where human design helps you to understand. So it's basically the proportion of which way the energetics are weighted. So for example, in my own human design chart, all 4 of my arrows that are either side of the head are facing left in my chart. So I easily relate to and operate from a masculine energetic expression in my life for all of those 4 different components of the way I process life. But that doesn't mean I cannot tap into or embody the feminine expression. It's just that my kind of default setting is always going to be the left facing, the masculine expression of each of those aspects. Whereas for Darren, in his chart, his are all pointing to the right. And this is where I love in terms of relationships and the way we interact with other people. It's this incredible balance. It's the yin and yang. It's the life force. It's the energetics of the world, and how we can understand how everything connects and intertwines with each other, balances each other out, and then also how we can each have our own unique way of showing up, right? So it becomes incredibly powerful when parenting. Imagine like just knowing the fact that if you as a parent have mostly left facing arrows, but your child has mostly right facing arrows, then you know that maybe your way of showing up in the world, that is that masculine energetic expression of order, structure, writing lists, sticking to one thing at a time, is going to be constantly coming up against your child's way of approaching things, which are basically lists are no good to them. They're coming at it with more of the creativity, the expression, the artistic approach, the right brain. They're going to remember more like the general details and not necessarily do so well with specific facts or remembering a list kind of thing. So it's empowering to know that it's not that they just need to work harder to become like you. They just have their own unique way of doing things, and it's empowering them to understand that, okay, you don't do so well with lists, so that's wonderful. Let's work out whether, say if your child is old enough to have a cell phone, that they get used to setting themselves reminders for activities so that they know how to use apps on their phone, that they can keep track of what it is that they need to do, so that they're not working in a way that is counter to their energetic expression. They're supporting their energetic expression. So I'm going to run through the different types, the 12 different types, and explain them all so that you can get a feel for the different types of digestion that exist. So the first I'm going to cover is consecutive appetite and alternating appetite. So this is all to do with how many things are processed or digested at once by your child. So if your child's digestion in their human design chart is consecutive appetite, which is our son's type of digestion, this means that one thing at a time are their jam. So basically, consecutive appetite kids will be that child who wants to maybe just eat a whole bowl of rice in one sitting, but nothing else. And maybe once they're ready to move on from that, they might then choose to eat lots of cucumber chopped up, for example, and nothing else. Or they might be the type of child that will, for breakfast, eat 3 bananas, right? Similarly, this is an approach that they'll intuitively just take with information and with learning. So it's like lots of one thing in a large quantity in one sitting. And they'll need that support to limit external distractions while they eat or process information. And so you can think of it like with food, they don't want external things coming onto the plate. They just want that one thing. The same sort of goes for the way they process information. They don't want the external stuff coming in. They just want to be able to get into and digest that one piece of information or one activity without anything else coming in and interrupting that. Then alternating appetite kids are the ones who need short bursts. They need little bits of food and they need it often. That's how they work best. And similarly, the one ingredient approach works, but think of this as more like they can graze on one thing and then move on to another. So maybe their dinner plate is separated into several different collections of foods rather than being all like tossed together or mixed together or wrapped in like a wrap or something like that. So when it comes to information or learning, these are the type of kids that will do well focusing on one thing for a short burst, and then will thrive when they're allowed to move at their own pace with learning and digesting and processing that information in the kind of one short burst and then moving on to another thing without it all being mixed together. Now, open taste and closed taste. So if your child has taste digestion, then this is all about consistency and how they express it in their life. So open taste kids will thrive when they are able to be more in charge of what they eat and to have the support to try new things or to experiment with tastes they enjoy, but on their own terms. So they'll enjoy having options they can choose from and to be empowered to make decisions as to what aligns for them. So this is where their authority can be super powerful to help them know what is right for them to eat and when. Then closed taste children will enjoy consistency, but will be far pickier. These will be the kids that just say no to something without even trying it. And no matter how many times you try to force them or persuade them to just try a mouthful, and then they'll thrive when they're allowed to follow more of a routine, the safe foods, the safe meals that they know work for them. And it's like being allowed to reach for what they want when they want it. So a really good example here would be a projector child with closed taste digestion. Putting meal labels will be pretty meaningless, right? So labeling meals is going to be meaningless for a child with this sort of digestion and as a projector, because basically a projector's energy works uniquely to them. So they might be extremely hungry straight after a day at school because they have had to use up so much of their energy just to get through the day, just to keep up, to be around people all day long and intermingling with everybody else's auras and the noise and everything, the chaos. So they'll want to come home and need to make something that they know is comforting and secure for them, that they enjoy. And then they might not actually be very hungry at dinner time, but that's okay, because remember, as a parent, often things like eating a large dinner are just the projected conditioning that we've picked up over our own lives. And who's to say that that's the right way to eat, like the 3 meals a day and a large dinner when everyone sits down as a family? Like for your closed taste projector child, it probably doesn't support them at all having to only have a small snack after school when they're energetics wise. They really need something that's going to support and nourish them and give them a really big recharge of energy in that moment when they first get home from school. And if they just have to wait for an arbitrary time on the clock to be allowed to eat a big meal at the end of the day, you can see how these things start to actually take away from the child's natural intuitive way of supporting themselves. You know, like at the end of the day, they know themselves what they need, and they're going to only ask for something that they need. So it's kind of leaning into that way of going, actually, you know what? For my projector child, meals no longer have labels. We know that when you need to eat, you need to eat, and we're going to trust that, and we're going to experiment that, and we're going to be intuitive with it and allow you to eat maybe at different times of the day, but to see how that helps you and supports you in your unique energy type. Now, hot thirst and cold thirst. So the thirst digestion kids are all about being nourished on a schedule that is dictated by their thirst. So think of this in terms of both their digestion, so aka lots of liquids throughout the day, but also their way of digesting knowledge and information will be like a thirst for that detail, or a thirst for knowledge, a thirst for understanding. So this becomes really interesting because it's where this can also come into play is with temperature regulation and what the physical self thrives in, not just the internal digestion, but the way you kind of digest your outward environment as well. So hot thirst, which is my digestion type, by the way, is all about serving everything warm. So food and drinks warm or hot. And that might be the physical temperature, for example, or making sure that a food is at least at room temperature, or spiced, like warming from that point of view. So the food might be spiced with something like cinnamon or turmeric or other spices that give that warming process or sensation to the digestive system. And so this is something that I've experimented with myself with, rather than for years when I used to have an ice cold smoothie every morning for breakfast. Now what I do is I make myself a hot tonic with, some raw cacao and my coconut milk and my protein powder and other goodies, and I have it warmed as a drink. And it's like a tonic that I drink in the morning, but it's sort of got more in it, so it's more nourishing. And I know myself, I've always been drawn to foods that are warm or warmed and savory, for example, like comfort foods, right? That's always what I've naturally been drawn to. But that also goes into the digestion of information and being comfortable in the space, like comfort, and being in a space or place that I feel comfortable learning or digesting information within. Like I can't do just randomly sitting in a really noisy, uncomfortable location and banging out a bit of work on my laptop. Like I can never do that. I need to know I'm in the right environment to allow me to get into my zone and to get into my work. And I know myself that when it comes to that physical self and temperature regulation, my physical self thrives in the warm more than the cold. So I've always struggled with the cold, and I enjoy and I thrive being in a dry, warm heat environment, which is entirely different to my partner and my son, who struggle a lot more with the heat, for example. So then cold thirst is the opposite of that. So it's all about serving food and drinks that are cold or cooled down. And these are the kids that don't jump on them to go eat if they're busy doing something. That thing of you might be stressing yourself out as the parent going, come on, eat it while it's hot. But if your child is cold thirst, you're literally wasting your energy and worrying about nothing, because they actually thrive having cold stuff and that kind of process of letting things cool down first. So they will probably really thrive on having things like cold salad ingredients or raw foods or leftovers the next day, just eating straight out of the fridge cold, having lots of cold drinks on hand or ice cold drinks on hand. Then also, interestingly, for cold thirst people, that physical self and the temperature regulation, they will struggle slightly to regulate their body temperature when it is hot outside. So they might thrive better in a cool or dry environment. Now, calm touch and nervous touch digestion. So this digestion type is all to do with movement to help the digestion process, or equally the lack of movement. So, and then equally, this is absolutely when it comes to digesting information, learning, play, also for your children. So calm touch children, it's really supporting them with a calming space or environment to eat in. So limiting distractions, being away from technology, allowing that quiet time and space. So these are not the kids that need to be sitting having a conversation with you over the dinner table, because it actually counters their intuitive way they digest best. These kids need their space, need their alone time, need the quiet, and they need to be avoiding those sort of stimulating environments. Now, nervous touch children, it's the opposite. These kids are on the go while they eat. These are the ones who can't sit still. They need to be on the move in order to digest. So while you might, as a parent, be trying to always like helicopter after them and force them to come and sit down, or to try and be almost like you're trying to make them be the calm touch child, because that's probably what you've been told is, or shown by society, that that's the correct way to eat a meal, for example. These kids actually thrive when they are around a super stimulating environment. There's lots of noise, there's technology around, there's big conversation going on, and that they can kind of eat on the move and don't have to fix themselves to a chair. So they'll probably do best if they're allowed to kind of snack or graze their way through a meal. They might keep getting up and down, they might leave the room, they might come back. They'll probably feel like they're a hot mess, but that's actually what makes them thrive. So this is where it's so empowering to know what the digestion is for your child. So, and it's almost like trying to get them to actually process a big meal in one hit is probably energetically not great for them. And this goes the same for learning or digesting information. The stimulation and the movement actually helps them. So they might be the kids that learn better or more efficiently or more effectively if they're actually allowed to, say, play with a ball at the same time as they're learning, or to have a fidget cube, or to be allowed to walk around the room while they're listening to something, or to get up out of their chair and leave the room and then come back again. So it's understanding and empowering, because these sorts of things, obviously, when we try and go, hey, this is what you are and your true self is, but we're going to try and stick you in this square box of what the standardized schooling system is, you can see immediately how just even for something as simple as understanding nervous touch within your child is kind of completely counter to the standard school system, right? So high sound and low sound, this is also going straight on from that into, what doesn't usually fit within the standard system. So these are the sound digestion kids. These are the ones that it's all about the type of noise they need in order to digest food, but it's also how they need to, the type of noise or situation they need to be around to allow them to thrive when learning as well. So high sound are the children who need lots of noise in order to get their digestion actually processing and moving and working optimally. So these are the kids that having their music cranked up, the TV on in the background, loud conversation, they actually really thrive in that environment, and their digestion is working its best when it's in that environment. So accommodating this is that permission slip for your child to go, actually, you know what? It's not that you're being distracted. It's not that you are being, purposely irritating. It's what's allowing you to actually thrive. So, maybe the permission slip within your family is to go, hey, our child has high sound digestion. So we're actually going to let them wear headphones with their music on during the day when they get up in the morning and they're getting ready for school, or when they're sitting at the table eating. Maybe they're listening to an audiobook or a podcast, or they've got YouTube playing through Bluetooth, and it's actually totally energetically correct for them. But that way that all the other digestion types maybe in your family are accommodated to is through something like the headphones, because chances are the rest of the digestion types actually might not thrive so well with all that noise going on. So it's kind of just understanding like how it can work within a family dynamic. And these are the kids that maybe they need to go to sleep at night with the radio playing in their bedroom, or with an audiobook being played in their room, for example. Then low sound children, these are the other end. They need the quiet environment, or to be able to choose to have some sort of noise going on, but it's like a low background noise. These might be the kids who thrive doing their homework with the TV just on like really low volume in the background, just to have that kind of noise going on. Or maybe they just need the complete quietness. So this is where equally having some noise cancelling headphones could be an excellent investment for a child with low sound digestion, so that, say for example, if you as a family have to go out to a place that is crowded or noisy or out in public, they can then pop them on and get that relief from the noise, because that level of noise probably will actually be really impossible for them to be comfortable around. And so similarly, they need to learn in a quiet environment, right? So a noisy classroom at school is probably what might be making them really struggle to thrive and to show up every day with learning in the right way for them. And equally at nighttime, going to bed, going to sleep, they might need something like a noise machine, for example, with that low, soothing sort of background noise that helps to just put them off to sleep at night. Now, digestion, all to do with light, is the last two we're going to cover in this episode. So direct light and indirect light. And this is such an interesting one, and it's exactly what it sounds like. This is all to do with daytime or nighttime digestion. So this goes for eating and information or learning. So if your child's digestion type is direct light, this is everything to do with the daytime hours when the sun is up. So making sure that all the eating is happening in the brightest light possible is going to help them to thrive and their digestion to work to its best. So sitting in the sun, having their meals, perhaps having the biggest meal of their day at lunchtime, allowing them to have lots of outdoor time while it's middle of the day so that they get in all that natural light to support just their digestion of life, right? And then avoiding eating or snacking when it's dark, for example. And these might be the kids that really struggle if you live in a part of the world like here in New Zealand, where when it's winter, the daylight hours are so much shorter because, winter means that it's dark for longer in the evenings. It doesn't get light until later. So effectively, for a child who's got direct light as their digestion type, if it's winter and the days are so much shorter, their digestion isn't able to work effectively or allow them to thrive with all of that darkness and then only having extremely short days. Then, for example, indirect light children, these are kind of the night owls digestion-wise. So they will possibly not be that hungry or that fussed about food during the day, but will need their largest meals or sustenance at nighttime or after dark, for example, with maybe just a few snacks that get them through the day if needed. But they won't do well if they're forced to kind of eat to, again, going back to this abstract rhythm or routine that society tells us that we should be following, the should in inverted commas, because especially if that rhythm or routine is only determined by society's time on the clock, so to speak, that child is going to feel completely out of whack, because it's like they're forcing themselves. Again, it's like trying to force yourself into a square hole when you're a round peg. So it's allowing the empowerment of your child to know that if they intuitively eat lots after dark, allowing that. And these will be the kids that are probably getting up for midnight snacks, for example, or that will just with apparent ease stay up late every night, right? So when it comes to learning or digesting information or play, for example, during the day, these kids will thrive if they're given a space where they can digest information, where they can learn. Maybe they can engage in play that's dim, it's dimly lit. Maybe it's a nice cozy space with very low lighting, or none at all if you don't need it on. And they'll really find that supportive. So it's it's that reverse when we talk about the seasons, that in summer, here in New Zealand with long daylight hours, those children might actually really struggle with that, and the fact that it doesn't get dark until so late. Where I live, in the height of summer, it's sort of 11 o'clock at night and it's still light enough outside that you can do everything you need to do. The sun doesn't go down until so late, and then it's up again extremely early in the morning, sunrise. So these kids might actually really struggle and be out of sorts for those months, but then really thrive during winter when it gets dark early. And it's the reverse of what we were just talking about with the direct light kids. So I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. As I said, remember that next week I'll be doing part 2 of aspects of parenting and human design, and how they're just such a wonderful way of empowering yourself as a parent in the new paradigm. And of course, as always, I like to say you can always think of human design as your permission slip as a parent, but also your permission slip for your child, straight from the universe to show up every day as your true self, to come understand who you came here to be and what your soul chose to come here to embody this lifetime around. We're not here to be the same homogenous beige flavor of human being. So let's start to really empower ourselves to thrive in understanding and celebrating our uniqueness. So thank you so much as always for being here and listening in. And if you're listening, tag me in your screenshots of listening to this episode. If you know your digestion, oh my God, come and tell me, because I love getting to hear what everyone's unique human design details are. And of course, I love chatting about everything to do with your human design. So while we're talking about geeking out about it, all the fun things to do with understanding our unique details, have you joined the Facebook group yet? It's kind of like a book club, but more like what I would call a human design hub on Facebook. It's a private group where you can come and hang out. It's all to do with human design. So the link to join is in the show notes with this episode, or you can jump onto Facebook and look it up. If you'd prefer, the group is called Lotus Life Human Design with Rose Tautari. So as always, thanks so much for being here. Virtual hugs through the microphone, and I can't wait to bring you part 2 on the next episode.